Guys, it's that time of the week again, back for our championship score predictions. Let's jump into it. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. We've got a massive weekend of championship action coming up and some games which are definitely going to have an impact on the top 6 and bottom 3 come the end of the season. As always, I want you guys to get your score predictions in the comments down below and get yourself onto the prediction leaderboard. Before we do jump into anything though, let's give a big shout out to our sponsors over at OneFootball. If you're not already, make sure to check it out in the top line of the description down below. Really handy to have, especially as we do have all these championship games going on at the moment. You can get live updates to your phone whenever a goal goes in, and you can also read up on the opposition that you are playing this weekend in a little bit more detail. Look into who their key players are and where they might hurt you. So I'd recommend the link down below. And before we do jump into anything, let's take a look at the current standings of the Predictions League. So as you can see to the side of me, finally, it has been a long time coming, ladies and gentlemen, but they have made it back into the main Prediction League. I spent quite a bit of time out in non-league, but it's back-to-back promotions from me. I've had a decent couple of weeks in terms of score predictions, and you guys can do the same. All it takes is a few good weeks to get yourself into that main league. As you can see to the side of me for League 1, as ever, things are still ridiculously close around here. Obviously, we did the whole split in the middle of the season, and ultimately right now it's too close to call. And the same can be said for League 2 as well, as you can see to the side of me. And like I always mentioned, the people that are just below League 2, we've got a lot of people in that category at the moment that are just 1 or 2 points away, so keep getting your score predictions down below. But without any further ado, guys, let's jump into this one. And we're starting it out with a big one tonight. We got Derby going up against Forest. Now, it's quite funny how these two rivals have mirrored each other for large portions of the season so far. You know, both of them got off to absolutely horrible starts to the season, both of them then departing with the manager, and they've each started to pick up at a similar point in the season. Now, I think that both Rooney and Chris Hughton are doing a good job at their clubs at the moment, and so the meeting of these two does come at an interesting time of the season. So Derby coming off the back of that win in midweek 2-0 against Huddersfield, just what they needed. And one of the things we were talking about Derby around the start of the season was they couldn't really get anything over the line when it came to their home form. They've turned that around recently. They've won their last 4 home matches, and in that time they've only conceded 1 goal. Now, I don't think that this one's going to be perhaps a goal scoring thriller with Nottingham Forest. In each of their last 4 games there's been 1 goal or less scored. Obviously they themselves are coming off the back of a win in midweek, an impressive one against Rotherham, who haven't been an easy 3 points so far this season. They definitely had to work for that one, so I think it probably will be a bit of a cagey, low scoring game, this one. Each of the games they had against each other last season finished 1-1. I'm going to go down that similar sort of path for this one. I'm going to go 1-1, and FIFA is going to agree with me. Could be decided on a mistake or something like that, but should be an interesting watch nonetheless. Coming up next, we then got a big game. It's Bournemouth up against Watford. Now, for the first time this season, Bournemouth have dropped out of the top 6. Really damning result for them in midweek, losing against Cardiff. It was a fast start from the away side in that one, Bournemouth knocking on the door for a lot of the second half, but ultimately the damage had already been done in the first. Now, those sort of warning signs from Bournemouth have been there for a while now that they may start to drop off. This is where it could be made right though. If they were to come out here with a real statement of intent and beat this Watford side, it'll really make for an interesting end to this season. What they can't afford to do is just let their season fizzle out from here. Woodgate needs to find some sort of way to reimagine this side, because at the moment they're clearly underperforming. Watford, given credit to them, at one point we almost sort of ruled them out of the automatic promotion race. It looked like the 3 at the top then, Norwich, Swansea and Brentford, would maybe pull away from everyone else, but with their recent run of results, the amount of goals they're scoring, so 12 in their last 4, which is double the amount that Bournemouth have scored in that same time, you got to give them credit. They just about got over the line in midweek, beating Blackburn by 3 goals to 2, and I mean, they're finally starting to use those pacey wide players to their full effect. You know, if you get Sarr or Semmett in a 1v1 situation against a defender, you're always going to back those two to beat them, aren't you? So listen, this should be an absolutely fascinating game. I'm very interested to see if Bournemouth can bounce back, but I think I've got to be back in Watford. They've also improved their away form lately, winning their last 2. We're going to go 2-1 Watford in that game, with Thief saying it'll be 1-0 Watford. Next up, we then go to Oakwell. We got Barnsley going up against Millwall. Now, this should be an absolute cracker. Barnsley now just 1 point off the top 6 with a game in hand. hand. I think that the results in midweek really make the top 6 picture quite interesting now. And if Barnsley do manage to sneak in there, Valérien Ismaël may be just the most underrated manager in the league for the job he's doing at Barnsley at the moment. But what I've been most impressed by is, I mean, a lot of times on the channel so far this season we've spoken about that high intensity, high press, some of the high quality goals they score, and that was all on show in midweek. You know, the Callum Styles goal was brilliant. The high press resulted in the second goal, then winning the ball back up quite high up the pitch. But defensively, this Barnsley side's been brilliant lately. They've kept 4 clean sheets now in their last 5 matches. Millwall will pose a different sort of threat than what they faced recently, so they are currently 9 games unbeaten, Millwall, and have got that bit of grit back about them that I felt like they were missing at the start of the season. You know, oddly enough, they did seem a little bit like a soft touch at the start of the season when they were a little bit too easy to roll over, but lately they have got that grit back between their teeth. The last couple of performances I think have been a little bit frustrating, but it was a late equaliser in the game against Luton which got them back into that one. Having said that, you can feel like something that's happening at Barnsley at the moment, and that run may come to an end in this one. I'm going to go 1-0 Barnsley. FIFA's going to go for a 1-1. Next up we go to St Andrews. We got Birmingham up against QPR. Now, Birmingham in midweek did lose against Norwich, but certainly some positives from that game. It was 3-1 in the end, but going forward, in the first half especially, they definitely asked some questions. If they can take some of those characteristics into this game against QPR, they could potentially get a little bit of joy. QPR obviously drew with my side North End in midweek. It was a 0-0 draw. To be fair, even with it being a 0-0, there were still a fair few chances for each side. It was just 2 very good goalkeepers in the end. Defensively, QPR at times in that game did look a little bit open, but I suppose their get out of jail free card, like he's been throughout the season so far, has been Seny Dieng. You know, while you've got one of the best goalkeepers in the league behind you, you can afford to be a little bit more open with how your backline likes to be, really. But there are definitely some pockets of space that Birmingham could get into, especially with them some of their more creative players. For a score prediction, I'm going to go for a draw for this one. Fatigue may start to play into it. Obviously, QPR still, in the grand scheme of things, on a very good run of form, but Birmingham may be that sort of nullifier to them. I'm going to go for a 1-1 in this game, with FIFA going 2-0 Birmingham. Next up, we go to Ewood Park. We got Blackburn going up against Coventry. Now, Blackburn just keep shipping easy goals at the moment, don't they? It was another sort of example of that in midweek, 3-2 against Watford. Now, Harvey Elliott's goal, to be fair to him, was absolutely lovely, brilliantly taken, but the damage had very much already been done defensively, and we're sort of seeing Blackburn's season crumbling before our eyes at the moment. You know, 5 successive defeats now in the Championship. This potentially could be the sort of game to get them back up and going. Thinking back to these two sides meeting earlier on in the season, I know the circumstances around that game were, you know, quite different at the time, but Blackburn put 4 goals past Coventry in that game. They were very much playing with that sort of arrogance about them going forward, and that's sort of arrogance in a good way. But yeah, they just have lost their way recently. I still think there's goals in that team, but defensively, can they actually keep them out? Now, Coventry, bit of a frustrating one for them in midweek. It was a loss against Swansea in the end. Swansea just getting about over the line. It was a bit of a grind from them, but Coventry's away record themselves has fallen off a little bit lately there, with that win now in their last 4 away matches. Blackburn's form has to change somewhere, and I feel like this potentially could be the game. I'm going to go 2-1 Blackburn. FIFA's going to go 1-0 Rovers. Next up we go to Brentford up against Stoke. Brentford picking up a big win in midweek. They ensured that sort of losing streak didn't carry on for all too long, and in the end were quite convincing against Sheffield Wednesday. The biggest sort of benefit was Ivan Toney getting on the pitch as well. From what I was originally sort of led to believe, I thought that he might be out for a little bit more of a lengthy period of the season, but yeah, for him to be back in action for that game obviously is a big booster for Brentford moving forward. Now, this game's had a little bit in it, you know, in recent history. Obviously, this was the game last season that everything sort of started to go wrong for Brentford. Stoke won it by 1-0. I don't think that Stoke will be any sort of pushovers in this one, but they themselves, I thought, would have been quite disappointed in midweek with how the Barnsley game turned out, considering they were coming off the back of 2 back-to-back wins when they sort of started to get their season back up and going and for a real top 6 push. Now, a real bizarre stat about Stoke that I saw the other day, they're 29 league games without a win in London. I quite enjoy those sort of, you know, bizarre stats. So while I don't think there'll be a pushover, Brentford probably get over the line in this one. I'm going to go 2-0 to the home side, with FIFA saying it'll be 1-0 Brentford. Next up we then go to Luton up against Sheffield Wednesday. A big game in both teams' seasons this one. Luton themselves don't find themselves on a good run of form at the moment. They're now without a win in their last 7 matches. Now, I mean, nothing seems to be going their way at the moment. You know, they can't buy 3 points at the moment, can they? It was a last minute equaliser for Millwall in their game in midweek, which denied them all 3 points in that one. Sheffield Wednesday, long term, that loss against Birmingham mentally could really play on these sort of plays, because up until that point, I mean, they were just about keeping their head above water. I mean, we've said it a few times on the channel so far this season, but games for sides like Sheffield Wednesday this season, you know, their season isn't going to be determined on losing games against Brentford. It's going to be those sort of games against the Birminghams, and this weekend up against Luton. They need to have some sort of a reaction, and we need to see a performance in this game. For a score prediction, I'm going to go for a draw in this one. Neither side quite has fortune on their side at the moment, so they may cancel each other out. I'm going to go for a 1-1. FIFA's going to go 1-0 Luton, but another draw doesn't do anyone any favours here. Next up then, we got Middlesbrough going up against Cardiff. Now, Middlesbrough are probably, out of all the teams that are currently in and around the playoffs, sort of going for the top 6, Middlesbrough have been the toughest one to put your finger on, because lately especially, their form has just been so up and down. You never quite know where the levels are going to be at. Now, I didn't see the performance coming in midweek against Bristol City. Maybe I should have, with Pearson coming in there, but it makes for an interesting game for this one. Will obviously Borough bounce back? Now, Cardiff are very much the informed side in the league at the moment under Mick McCarthy. You know, McCarthy against Warnock's obviously always an interesting battle in the Championship. But if you were to tell me like a couple months ago that Cardiff would be in this position now, in the top 6, I wouldn't have believed you. But what a job McCarthy's done since arriving. And I mean, we all said it from the start of the season that there is real talent in that squad, but now they're really starting to show it. It was another goal for Kiefer Moore in midweek from the penalty spot, and a real statement from Cardiff to win that sort of match against a side that was above them in the league. So I mean, now for Cardiff, it's all about solidifying that place in the top 6. You know, Reading's the next target for them to go ahead and overtake, and I think they probably get the job done here as well. I'm going to go 2-0 Cardiff in this game, with Thief saying it'll be 1-0 Cardiff. Next up, we then go to Deepdale. We got Preston up against Huddersfield. In the grand scheme of things, neither side's in a particularly good run of form. I mean, it's typical of the Championship that Huddersfield go from the weekend beating Swansea in one of their best performances of the season so far, to just a couple of days later being absolutely awful against Derby. They were, you know, completely outbattled in that game. Preston, it was another pretty frustrating performance in midweek. I felt like the game against QPR was there for the taking, and whatever happens in this game, I think, determines if that was a decent point against QPR or not. You know, should we win this one? 4 points from our last 2 isn't a bad return. If we drop points in this one as well, I think we'll look back on that game as a little bit of a missed opportunity. The biggest player and sort of brightest spark from North End at this point in time is Anthony Gordon. I thought he was absolutely brilliant in midweek, and I think for the second half of the season in general, he is the sort of player who we're all sort of pinning our hopes on in terms of turning this current run of form around. The reverse fixture earlier on the season was actually a really entertaining one against Huddersfield. It was a bit like a basketball match, just it was end-to-end stuff, both teams really going for it. I hope we get a similar sort of picture in this one, but maybe each team will be a little bit more reserved with how the rest of the season's gone so far. I'm going to back Preston for this one. I'm feeling slightly more confident than I have been in recent weeks about us getting a result here, which is always a dangerous thing, I do recognise, but I'm going to go 2-1 Preston. FIFA's going to say 1-1. For the sake of Alex Neil, I feel like we need a win here. Next up, we then go to Rotherham up against Reading. Big game in both sides' seasons. Neither of them got the result they wanted in midweek. Rotherham losing their last 4 matches. Now, what you would say about each of them is it's fine margins in all of them. They've lost each of their last 4 games by just a 1-goal margin. I think that what we saw in midweek was maybe a bit of a leggy performance. I think that with quite a few of the squads now actually in the Championship, ones that don't particularly have that squad depth of others, we are starting to see a few players that are looking a little bit jaded with the current schedule and how relentless it's actually been. Now for Reading, it's been remarkable how much they've actually tailed off recently. That's now 4 losses in their last 5 matches. I thought that the game in midweek against Wycombe was a good opportunity to pull themselves out of this current run of form, but nothing went their way. It was a bit of a calamity of a goal they conceded. Lucas Jal missed another penalty. I think that's his 3rd miss of the season now. It's amazing how a player, it can be so clinical from open play but can't put a penalty away. You know, he missed one against North End not too long ago, but Paunovic needs to change something, but I'm not quite sure what that is at this point in time. It's going to be another very similar game against this Rotherham side, who are battling for absolutely every point at the moment. And to be honest, I think that Rotherham might end up edging this one if Reading don't pull their finger out. I'm going to go 2-1 Rotherham in this game, with FIFA saying it'll be 2-0 Reading. Next up, we then go to the Liberty in the game which I'm very much looking forward to. We got Swansea going up against Bristol City. Now, Swansea did win in midweek. By no means was it the prettiest of performances, but I think above all else, the result was the most important thing for Swansea in that game, you know. Considering how things went at the weekend, shipping 4 goals against Huddersfield, to get the clean sheet and just about get over the line in the end, I think will serve them well, you know. You can't afford to be going on a sustained period of losing at this point in the season, you know. We saw Brentford and how much that's actually affected them by losing 3 games in a row. They've only just started to pull themselves out of it. But, I mean, this game against Bristol City has just become a whole lot harder. Nigel Pearson, I mean, that is the definition of impact straight away. 3 goals they put away against Middlesbrough. They had 6 shots on target for that game, which is more than their previous 4 games combined, which just shows how tragic they've been in front of goal recently. But Naki Wells seems to have his confidence back. And with Pearson now being there, I mean, it's exactly the same group of players, but it does give Bristol City this new edge, this new dynamic for the rest of the season. And yeah, surely they'll be looking up the table now with how well that first game went. But, I mean, they can't afford to take this game against Swansea lightly. For a score prediction, I'm going to back Bristol City to get a point from this one. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Pearson might work wonders there for the rest of the season. FIFA's gone 1-0 Swansea, which I could also see as a possibility. But yeah, I'll go 1-1. And then to finish things off, we've got Wycombe going up against Norwich. Now, I mean, Timu Puki's the first player that we need to talk about when it comes to Norwich. He's scored 6 goals in his last 4 games now. He could have had a hat-trick in midweek, but couldn't convert from the penalty spot. But even so, Norwich are looking good at this point in time. You know, that lead at the top of the table is very much established now, and by far and away, they are looking like the favourites to be going up. Now, one of the biggest plaudits I can give Norwich this season, it sounds like such a basic thing, but it's something that not a lot of other Championship clubs have been able to do so far this season, and that's win the winnable matches, if that sort of makes sense. So many times this season we've seen teams in and around the top of the Championship slip up against this sort of opposition, and to be fair, Norwich only just got over the line last time they played Wycombe at Carrow Road. It was last minute Mario Varancic goal which won it for them. But Wycombe, I mean, no doubt will continue chipping away at things. You know, it was a good win for them in midweek. Obviously they had the chance to make it too, but they missed a penalty of their own. Having said that, Norwich do seem to be on this different wavelength at the moment, and I think the safe prediction is always going to be with them at this point in time, isn't it? So I am going to go 2-0 Norwich in this game, with FIFA going for a 1-1 draw. But guys, there we have it. There are my score predictions for what I see happening over this weekend in the Championship. So do get all your thoughts in the comments down below. Get your score predictions in there for a chance to get yourself onto the prediction leaderboard. Loads of fun we're having so far on it. But other than that, that will never have the for today's video, guys. If you did go on to enjoy it, make sure to leave a like, and please do subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. But other than that, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.